I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. I want to thank the teachers for being here. It's 2 minutes for a state senator is barely enough time to get to the microphone, so I'm sure I won't get all I want to say, but the bottom line is parental involvement is the most important piece. But when you get past parental involvement, we've got to study our funding system on how we fund our schools. The situation we have now is the answer is always from educators, a lot of times, not necessarily from teachers, but from people in the education bureaucracy is we need more money. And what we've got to do is find ways. We've offered flexibility, we need more flexibility, but the bottom line is we need parental involvement, we need funding reform. Right now we talk about base student costs like that's the only thing involved in funding education. When you've got property taxes, you've got a lot of other things involved in that formula. If we can get down to a per pupil amount and say this is what it costs to educate a child and take the politics out of educating children, we'd be a lot better off. I've asked the superintendents from all the districts to give me that number. I've yet to have a number. I'd like to know what that cost is. Mr. Anthony, Representative Anthony, spent his life in public education. He thinks it's $10,000. We're over that now. But the answer can always be more money because we continue to grow this state's budget. Right now we're growing the Medicaid budget. And all this money is being pumped along that corridor of shame. And through the penal system or the welfare system, we're going to pay for those kids. We need to find some way to get those kids educated so they can produce for their families instead of our families having to produce for theirs. You can be a lot of the places tonight. I appreciate you being here. You know, the key is communication. There should be a lot less of this and a lot more of this. And we don't have that right now, but I'm hoping after this election we can get there as a state. Thank you.
House District 38, the Honorable Dorman. The single most important priority in education is for us as South Carolinians to control our own destiny. While we welcome new ideas from any source, one thing we won't allow is for our education policy to be hijacked by out-of-state special interests. In 2008, candidate Lee Bright received $41,000 from a New York billionaire. $41,000 from one man in one skyscraper in New York City. Lee Bright received more money from this billionaire than any other legislator in our state. And for what? We don't know what his hidden agenda is for our children, but I can tell you this. If you think that the reason a New York billionaire is bankrolling Senator Bright is because he wants what's best for our children, then I've got some South Carolina currency to sell you. If we return my opponent back to Columbia, it will have a huge ripple effect on the rest of the state. The message will be sent to those that wish to destroy public education that our education policy is up for sale to the highest bidder. Instead, we should send a message loud and clear to the New York billionaires that it will be the families and the moms and the dads in our communities who are going to control the destiny of our children's education. Both my opponent and I attended public schools in Spartanburg County and graduated from Dorman High School. But unlike Senator Bright, I haven't forgotten where I came from. No amount of money from any out-of-state special interest is going to change my opinion and my belief and my support for the education of our children. That's why it's crucial that you and 10 of your friends and family vote on June the 12th. Thank you.
There's two things I don't know how to do. One is quit and two is pander. I'm going to be honest and up front about it. I've looked at consolidation for Spartanburg County. It doesn't work. The numbers aren't there. Even District 4, which is one of the smaller districts, has a less per pupil cost than the other districts in the county. So I'm against consolidation. I will tell you this. My brother-in-law, Mark Smith, is the principal at the 9th grade school. I've got another brother-in-law that's the principal at Fair Forest. My mother-in-law is a retired state employee. So believe me, I hear both sides of it. But when it comes to getting my integrity and character attacked, I want to use the words of Trey Galvin. Mr. Hawkins does not want to go there.
representatives, I led the fight to defeat a measure that could have led to school consolidation. I believe that for the most part, what we have in Spartanburg County works for the family and its children. But I want to say this. In his last election, my opponent was endorsed by South Carolinians for Responsible Government. This special interest group has as its key agenda consolidation of school districts in Spartan and South Carolina. How he would actually vote on the issue, if it was to come up, is anyone's guess. But can we really afford the risk? With our children's future at stake, we need a senator who will stand up for the rights of parents and citizens to control their children's education. Thank you. I support performance incentives for teachers. The criteria I would use are as follows. Results. Incentives should be based on results achieved in the classroom. Excellent results should merit performance incentives. But results should not be the only criteria. Public schools, unlike private schools, don't have a choice as to who their student population is. They have to take everyone and do the best that they can with that child. So other factors should be considered as well for incentive pay, like passion demonstrated by the educator, hard work, initiative, and creativity. In his campaign literature, my opponent says the purpose for our schools is not for, quote, social experimentation. Of course that should not be the purpose of schools. But what's most telling is that he would suggest that our teachers are engaging in social experimentation. It shows how completely out of touch he is in what really goes on in a classroom, and how quickly educators are going to be thrown under the bus to score political points. Instead, we should be working for real and positive solutions. Until we remove the bureaucratic and administrative red tape that teachers must endure, we will never make progress in this area. No child left behind was a terrible piece of legislation. We need to give teachers the flexibility they need to do what works for them to achieve excellence in the classroom.
I do believe in incentive pay for teachers, so the problem is that I haven't seen a plan yet that would work. So it's got to be developed. I think you've got to work with teachers. You've got to work with people across the state to come up with something. You know, I believe the states are the greatest incubators, and the fact that we've got 50 states and there's not one state we can point to with a good teacher incentive plan says it's a lot more complicated than it seems. So I think in theory it's good. I just haven't seen anything in practice to make it work. I do know that both my daughters are in public schools right here, one at Dorman and one fixed to be in Dorman at the freshman campus, Kaylee and Kendall. But we've got some great teachers, but to say that all teachers are equal, I just don't think that's accurate. I think some teachers may do a better job than others, and they need to be rewarded. And I think that we need to keep those teachers in the teaching field instead of in administration. A lot of teachers that do great jobs go in administration because of the money. So I think we need some way to reward those teachers in order to keep them in the classroom and not have to go to administration. Thank you.
Senate District 12. The only school choice that I would support as a South Carolina senator would be school choice that did not take dollars or negatively affect our public school system in South Carolina. That's where I would draw the line. My opponent will tell you that he is for vouchers in, quote, failing schools. Don't be fooled by this rhetoric. Failing schools, as he cynically calls them, is just the beginning of the privatization plan. Because once he has sucked all the resources out of these so-called failing schools and let the children in those schools defend for themselves, he will take his voucher schemes statewide. His actions would destroy public education as we know it and leave our schools hollow shells of what they once were. Believe me when I tell you that my opponent has 41,000 reasons to vote against our public schools. I think we can do better, but I need your vote June 12th. Thank you. Well, here we go again, 41,000 reasons. Let me tell you about two reasons, and that's my own children. My wife and I had a discussion. I wanted my kids to go to private school. She wanted to go to public school. I said, I'll run for the school board. If it goes well,
then they go to public schools, so I'll be involved and know what's going on. Well, we got some good public schools. I would like for a couple of folks on the stage that kids don't go to public schools, that send to private schools, to know District 6's got some fine schools, District 5's got some fine schools. But if you think campaign contributions are going to hurt my own children, I mean, is that an attack that you can literally make to this stage? I mean, come on. And teachers that think I would hurt my own children, I mean, that is sad. My kids are in those public schools, and I would give my life for my kids. So, and a minute is not enough time to discuss it. We ought to go ahead and get on this stage right now and for the next hour debate choice. Because I sat down with 7 superintendents, and I said, there are schools in this state you would not send your children to, and they agree. But yet we'll let these other children go. You know why? Because they don't pay our salaries. They're down there in the state. Our kids are going to pay for those kids. Penal system or welfare system, they're going to pay for the rest of their life.